May I have your attention, please? The following is not the real Jeff Foxworthy.
If you do more splits than a gymnast, you might be a beekeeper. If you use a queen clip to keep your hair out of your face during hive inspection, you might be a beekeeper. If the parking lot valet says, "What's this sticky stuff on your door handles?" you might be a beekeeper.
Welcome to Be Love Beekeeping, presented by our great friends over at Mann Lake. Today we'll be traveling to the Great White North for a lively discussion with a beekeeper whose bees are clustered for 7 months of the year. But first, we're beginning to get answers to the Great American Bee Die-Off of 2025. This press release is titled, New USDA Research Links Early 2025 Honeybee Losses to High Viral Loads and Mite Resistance. Now, please bear with me as I'm going to read most of this so that you can hear exactly what the researchers are saying. New research from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service, USDA ARS, sheds light on the causes behind the catastrophic honeybee colony losses reported by commercial beekeepers earlier this year. The findings point to alarming high levels of viral infections vectored by Varroa destructor, Varroa mites, with resistant genes to a common treatment as key drivers of colony collapse. The study, which analyzed samples from 6 major commercial beekeeping operations affected by the losses, provided the most detailed evidence to date of the biological factors behind the widespread die-offs. Collectively, these operations managed nearly 184,000 colonies, or roughly 7% of all U.S. hives, and reported losses averaged over 60%, just as bees were being staged for California's almond pollination season. Quote, "The beekeeping and bee health community appreciates the work of the USDA ARS Bee Research Laboratories. They quickly took samples of lost colonies, and now that they've released the analysis, beekeepers can better understand what happened and take action," said Matt Malika, Senior Project Director at Keystone Policy Center, which facilitates the Honeybee Health Coalition. "We understand more analysis is occurring, and we look forward to learning more about the other potential causes of these significant colony losses." Researchers found that deformed wing virus and acute bee paralysis virus in both pooled colony samples and individual bees showing shaking and other signs of morbidity. Experimental inoculation further confirmed these viruses as the likely cause of mortality in collapsing colonies. Crucially, all Varroa mites collected from affected colonies tested positive for a genetic marker linked to resistance to amitraz, the most commonly used miticide in commercial beekeeping. This finding underscores the urgent need for new tools and integrated pest management strategies. Quote, "This is a critical moment for honeybee health," said Patty Sundberg, president of the American Beekeeping Federation. "We can't continue relying on a single line of defense against Varroa. These mites are evolving quickly, and our management tools must evolve just as fast. We also need to find treatments for these viruses, and we await the release of how pesticide exposure and poor nutrition amplify the impacts from these viruses." While viruses and Varroa were confirmed as primary contributors, the USDA ARS research also acknowledges other stressors, including pesticide exposure, poor nutrition, and environmental conditions may have exacerbated the losses. The findings released this week are a crucial first step in providing beekeepers actionable information, added Stephen Coy, president of the American Honey Producers Association. It highlights the necessity for additional miticides and methods of controlling Varroa and the associated viruses. We urge the USDA to provide the results of the impacts of nutritional, chemical, and environmental stress as soon as possible. Beekeepers need a complete picture of what happened in order to make sound decisions regarding the health of our colonies. In 2021, the Honeybee Health Coalition published Guide to Varroa Mite Controls for Commercial Beekeeping Operations, which laid out a vision that addresses the risks of amitraz resistance created by off-label use. The continuous use of off-label amitraz with increasing dosage as it becomes less effective is likely to cause amitraz to lose its effectiveness. And I'll add in here, it sounds like that's exactly what happened. The USDA ARS researchers have submitted a manuscript to a scientific journal for peer review. Now, if you are the kind of person that wants to read the whole study straight from the horse's mouth, we will have that link in our show notes. So go ahead and click down there and geek out to your heart's content. I'd like to welcome to the show today Raylynn White, coming to us from, oh my gosh, Newfoundland, Canada. How are you, Raylynn?
I'm doing great, and I really love the way you pronounced it. It was proper, like that's the way you say it.
Newfoundland or Raylynn?
Newfoundland. Like, you kind of flew that up, but you got it right on.
Well, I cheated. I've actually had somebody else on the show last year from Newfoundland.
That's great. Absolutely.
And she gave me the whole rundown on do not say Newfoundland or anything like that, or you get in big time trouble.
You are good.
But I have you on the show because you're an expert in Manuka honey, and that's what we're talking about today.
Oh, give it up. I'm glad this is not live.
Would you like to explain our inside joke to people?
I was on an interview on CBC, which is a live television show, but they also do audio podcasts and is also on YouTube. Anyway, they had callers call in, and one of the callers called in and asked me about Manuka honey. And unfortunately, I'm not too familiar about Manuka honey. Being from Newfoundland and all, like we don't have that honey here. So I can pass that to you if you want to do a better explanation of it.
I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to invite a listener from New Zealand to get a hold of me, okay, Eric at belovebeekeeping.com, someone that can talk about Manuka honey, and we'll do it sometime.
Fabulous. I would love that actually to be educated about that.
But you and I are not going to fake our way through that one. We're going to talk about things we know a little bit about. And the first one, I can't do that one either because you don't know anything about Varroa because you don't have to deal with it.
No. I do know a lot about Varroa, simply because we always, like a prevention, we always want beekeepers to be aware of it and educated about it. But thank goodness we are probably one of the only places in the world, I think, that doesn't have Varroa.
We had a guest on the show that is on Kauai. They don't have Varroa there yet, or Molokai. Other than that, I don't know.
I know Australia didn't do it for a while, but they certainly have it now, unfortunately, right?
I'm guessing Antarctica is Varroa free.
Yeah, I would think so. So in Newfoundland, back in 1985, I believe the date, the government passed a law basically saying that you were not allowed to import any honeybees into the province. So they did that because of the whole Varroa and trying to stop it before it even got started. And thankfully, it actually was successful. And like I said, we have no Varroa here in the island.
That's fantastic. You are blessed. Tell us a little bit more about beekeeping there. We know that the weather's got to be rough.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and things that you do and don't do as beekeepers. For example, I don't think you do a lot of pollination service.
No. So Newfoundland is a huge, huge province in Canada. It is over 500,000 people, but it's more land than people. So most people are actually in the Newfoundland, in the St. John's and surrounding area, not so much all over. So we have a lot of land that's not even used. Our biggest struggle here in Newfoundland with beekeeping is the weather. And that differs, like in the East Coast is way different than the West Coast. So East Coast, we don't get as much snow. However, we get cold temperatures and we get a lot of frost and freeze and thaw, which is obviously really hard for honeybees because they're in the cluster. They get tricked, they come out, and then they have to go back in. And another thing too, when you think about our honeybees are in the cluster about 7 months of the year. So that's a long time. And during that time, we have to kind of peak up on a kind of mild day to see if they have fought in it and close it up quick. So that's one of the big struggles we have in Newfoundland is the weather. And again, our spring is not that great. I'm only now, and it's June 6th. No, June, what day is it?
3rd.
June 3rd. Is it June 3rd? And I'm only now seeing drones actually in the hive. So very late. They're not sexually mature yet. So I have some queens probably going to go out mating next week. And I'm hoping that they're going to do well with that. But like I said, everything's a lot slower and at a slower pace here in Newfoundland with bees.
Yeah, without long of a time of them, I'll call it trapped in the hive. I mean, if it's too cold, they can't go outside, so they're trapped. There's a couple of things. One, obviously, they need enough to eat.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear about what you feed them. But are there problems with the fact that they can't take a cleansing flight for months?
Okay, so the eating part. So I really encourage beekeepers, new and seasoned beekeepers, that they have 100 pounds of honey going into their hive every winter. And when you think about it, that's not just a winter, that's 7 months basically that's what they have to chow down on for that amount of time. On top of that, I also, when we're getting into March, I often say that's the real high month that we get a lot of losses simply because bees run out of food. So I'm often encouraging people, go check to make sure they have. I mean, I'm not saying you obviously cannot go up and do a hive check and see if they have honey because it's too cold, but I would always make sure March that they have some fontanate and constantly put fontanate right on until probably the first week in May. So that's the feeding part. And yes, you're right. In regards to being trapped in a box, they are very much so. Usually in April, sometimes we have warmer days. I often joke that we are, through school and stuff I've learned, honeybees don't come out, 12 to 15 degrees. However, bees in Newfoundland are flying free at probably 6. They're very different bees. They're very hardy bees. They're very acclimatized to our weather and temperature. So there's nothing that's seeing bees flying around at 6 degrees. So we get a kind of a warm day in April. We call it yellow rain. It's everywhere. They just hold it in and obviously let it out when they can. But yeah, and then it gets a point where it goes to freezing again. Obviously, then they're trapped in again until probably the first week in May. So again, we have the yellow rain again. So it's kind of constant. So they're very hardy bees. I think they're very healthy, obviously, because you mentioned it, Varroa, but we also don't have wax moth. We don't have hive beetle. We don't have tracheal mites. We don't have
foul brood.
No foul brood, European or American. Our bees are really, the big thing with us is the weather. And a lot of people going into the winter really don't know how to insulate their hives properly. So you get a lot of moisture buildup. And obviously, I always say wet bees, unfortunately, are dead bees when it comes in the wintertime.
Yeah. What's your philosophy on that? Insulation.
Yeah. So for me, I took the leap this year, actually, and I overwinterized my hives. So I had 11 hives going into the winter, and all of them survived. I'm pretty happy about that. I actually put them in a shed. The shed itself isn't insulated. However, obviously it protects it from the wind. And in Newfoundland, that's probably the most important thing to do. The wind is so cold and bitter. I did insulate them even though they were in this shed. So I go a little bit overboard with insulation, I feel. However, I do the proper ventilation so that there's no water buildup or dampness within the hive. So I use the rigid insulation that you buy at Kent's. And I go all around it, obviously cover it. And then I have a top pillow, which is about 8 inches high on the top of it, going right over your inner cover. And I keep the entrance completely open. So there's no condensation. There's a right moisture and proper circulation. So we're not getting a lot of buildup moisture in the hive.
Yeah, and I think that's a mistake that a lot of us make is we want to insulate it so much that we close it all up.
I did that 1 year.
And they have to have some ventilation.
Yeah.
Even if it's cold.
I actually do. I have 2 hives here at the prison here in St. John's, so the federal prison. So I also do beekeeping down there with the inmates. Now those hives down there, I kept them outside. I just insulate them like I just mentioned. And they were the strongest hives I have. Even though like they weren't inside, they were booming. I'm already after making 2 splits on them, and it's only like first part of June.
I've heard about inmate programs before. I've read about some of them. Haven't had anybody on the show yet talking about them. Tell me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah.
How many inmates do you work with?
So I was up in my apiary working away, and I overheard Jan Bewley, who's the facilitator for the Phoenix Garden Project. So the Phoenix Garden Project, they're basically more about plants and planting and getting our hands in the dirt, and it's obviously quite beneficial. When I heard that, my ears like peaked. I was like, okay, we have to get bees in there too. So be honest with you, it was really easy to do. They were very open with it. They provide funding for hives. They provide funding for bees. And off I went, and I went in. So we do a group every Monday during the winter, like fall and winter. That group is just bee education. So we developed a module and everything. Every chapter, obviously, is all about beekeeping. And we didn't kind of leave out the big words, spermatheca or propolis. Those words are all there for the inmates to learn how to pronounce them properly. So yeah, so there's 9 men in the group. And when they're actually discharged, obviously the wait list to this group is really long. They quickly fill up. So we usually keep it at 9. They learn through the fall and the winter, and then in the spring and summer, they're out with me in the hives. So when I go down, obviously this time of year, I always say to beekeepers, you need to check your hive once a week just to make sure things are okay. You got a queen, there's no swarm cells, all that good stuff. So I go down once a week, and I get to take 4 inmates out with me when I do the hive checks. So there's certain inmates down there that they can do a complete hive inspection, and me just standing back, and they're doing it all on their own. And they knew nothing, obviously, about bees when they first came in prison. So for me as a social worker, I think beekeeping and social work goes hand in hand. And some of the biggest, deepest conversations I've had with inmates have been while we're beekeeping. It's a very much mindful activity. It's really grounding. It's just the boys and the bees. That's all they think about. They don't think about the problems they've had in the community or their loved ones. At that point, they're just all about the bees.
Quick break to thank our presenting sponsor, Mann Lake. I've found that Mann Lake has absolutely everything I need to take care of the health of my bees. Mite checks and treatments, beetle management, hive health and nutrition, pollen substitutes, food and feeders, and the knowledge base to help you know how to use it, including Bella, their AI beekeeping genius. Just look for her icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen at manlakeltd.com. While you're there, don't forget your discount code MLBLOVE10, it's in the show notes, for $10 off your first $100 purchase.
So it's very successful. I was hoping to add more hives down there this year, but I feel it's the amount of time it takes for me to do a hive inspection. It takes up too much time for the correctional officers to actually add more hives. So we're going to keep it at 2 and just get the boys out more and let them do the hive inspections.
Does it ever seem scary to go in there and do that?
Not at all. If anything, I've been treated with utmost respect. The boys are so appreciative of what we do. I mean, this is all volunteer, right? No one is getting paid for this. And they know, obviously, that I'm going in because I want to teach and I want them to learn and enjoy beekeeping. So if anything, I was always treated with respect. And yeah, it's just wonderful. And one day we actually had 2 correctional officers actually join us. And that's like, in some prisons, that's like a big no-no, right? But they did. And you've seen a correctional officer and an inmate, all the barriers down, boundaries down, and they're interacting as people, which they should be. So it's pretty precious.
That is great. And they know it's a privilege. So
yeah,
they're probably on their very best behavior.
Absolutely.
And a great skill for them to learn.
Yeah. There's one prisoner or inmate that's actually going to be sent to a federal penitentiary, the provincial, and that's what he says he's going to miss the most is the beekeeping. So it's sad, but hopefully he'll find an opportunity wherever he might go and develop that a little bit further.
You're doing some good out there in the world with beekeeping. That's something that we love to push here. By the way, Rae Lynn is known on social media as Bee Haven.
That's right.
Big time big time group following her. Let's talk about community a little bit. It's one thing I love about beekeepers. Everybody gets along. You and I were both at the North American Honeybee Expo. I didn't know you then, but I'll see you there this next year.
Absolutely.
Beekeepers are a great community, and there are all kinds of clubs all over the world, and every club has their own personality. And I just wanted to get a little bit of your input on what kinds of things can you do to make a club experience a good one?
That's a good question, actually. So I was involved in the club here in St. John's or in Newfoundland and Labrador. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very pleasant experience for me. And that's why Beehaven was born. I really kind of sat down one night and I kind of thought about what would I like to see in a club, or what would I like for new beekeepers or even seasoned beekeepers to experience. And one of the big pillars of Beehaven was kindness. Ask your questions, and no made fun of, no bullying. So all of that was what Beehaven was actually built on. And I'm really happy to what it has come to today. So for example, following, over, I think it's almost 36,000 followers. A lot of them are in the US, which surprises me. Germany, I have some in Mexico. Like it's just overwhelming when I see where people are from. But the group is such a community group. And we have beekeepers, seasoned beekeepers, answering questions of new beekeepers. I don't have to do a thing. It's almost like it's rolling on its own now. Like the rules are set, the boundaries are up, and it's just totally beekeeping, and it's respectful, and it's a very educated place to be.
But what about clubs? You said you didn't have a great experience, and you don't have to go into detail because we don't want to slam on anybody here, but
No.
maybe teach us what is good citizenship in a club.
Yeah, so I think respect is a big thing, and for me as a new beekeeper, back when I had joined that club, I wanted to learn. And that was a big thing for me. And my personality is like, I'm not going to do a half job. I want to do all the job. So when I started beekeeping, I wanted to know as much information as I could and as much education. So then I sought out the University of Montana beekeeping program, and I enrolled in that very tough course, very educational course. I loved it. But you know what? Unfortunately, some people weren't happy about that, or not very wanting to, use the information or the education that I received. Certainly, I would pass it on. And I was frowned upon for actually trying to better myself with that. So that didn't sit well with me. A lot of conversations with my hubby. And, as a social worker, again, didn't feel that it was appropriate or the right way to treat a person. So again, that's when I kind of uprooted, and I haven't looked back. And since I've kind of went on my own and started up Beehaven, I think I've enjoyed beekeeping so much more. It's not about drama. It's not about, who's better than who. It's about camaraderie. It's about respect and just learning from each other. And I'm glad you mentioned about the Bee Expo, because that's what I feel here. When I walked in through the Bee Expo the first day, it was just such a warm feeling, and everybody was in a great spirit. You could talk about bees for like 8 hours and no one would think you were a geek. Like, it was cool to be able to have those conversations. And you know what? You could have had the most successful YouTuber there. And when you approached them, they were just like you've known them for years. That's my experience anyway. But I cannot wait to go back and see some of those guys next year.
Cayman puts on a good show, and a lot of good people go. And it was worth going to. So there's your free plug, Cayman.
Oh, Cayman's a good guy.
He doesn't give me free entrance, but we'll plug it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard horror stories from people around our country. Some love their bee club. Some have been like, oh, there was this big war between treatment-free people and people that really think you have to treat a lot, because there are a lot of different philosophies in beekeeping. And so I'm with you. Let's just show respect and realize that everybody does things a little bit different, and that's okay.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And I think we have a lot to learn from bees. When you think about the hive and how they work together, and they respect one another, you know what? I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from the beehives on what they do and how they build a hive and make it strong.
So speaking of social media, one thing that I saw on your Facebook page just recently was something about queen cups versus queen cells and helping people understand the difference and what they mean. Would you give us a little 101 on that?
I really enjoy that topic very much. And again, more geared towards, the beginner beekeepers, because I remember when I was starting, if I saw a bunch of swarm cells, I didn't know they were swarm cells. It just never dawned on me. And again, as a new beekeeper, you try and educate yourself as much as you can before you get your bees, but obviously you're not going to learn everything. I mean, everybody learns every day about beekeeping, something new. So yes, the difference between a cup and an actual cell or a supersedure cell or a swarm cell, big differences. The queen cups, to me, when I think of a queen cup, I think of practicing. So honeybees are always practicing if mom dies or if mom becomes sick and how to replace. So queen cups, to me, they're practicing. I used to always think, oh my gosh, to building queen cups, there's something wrong. I got to have a look. That's not always the case. When you see a queen cup with an egg or a larvae in it, yeah, that's when you start to have to worry and wonder what's going on. Even worry more or wonder more if you think you have a very good laying queen, very healthy queen, and you start seeing queen cups. And a lot of people, discuss the fact of the placement of queen cells or the placement of queen cups. To me, typically, swarm cells are supposed to be at the bottom of the frame. Supersedure cells would be in the middle of the frame. Obviously, bees are going to throw curveballs every now and then. They're not going to follow that book always. However, just recently I had a new follower reach out to me and said, you know what? I have something very similar in my hive. And the picture was a bunch of swarm cells on the bottom of a frame. So I messaged her privately and had a good chat with her and, kind of gave her directions as what I would do if it was my hive. And sure enough, it was swarm cells. And she went out yesterday morning and she actually made a split. She took the swarm cells from the bottom box, put it in the top box, separated them, bang, she's got 2 hives. And hopefully, the swarm tendency has been gone. Can be a very confusing topic to new beekeepers, the difference between the 2 different cells.
For those that don't understand yet what they look like, explain the difference in what they look like so they know which one is a cup versus a cell.
So the swarm cells and the supersedure cell obviously looks the same. It's like I always compare it to like a peanut. Those old-fashioned peanuts you used to crack and eat. Exactly, that's what it looks like. Now, a cup is just not even half of a cell, actually. It's just like a little dish. How about that? It's a little dish, and it doesn't hopefully get any bigger. And there's usually, if you have a healthy queen and your hive is not overpopulated, there's not going to be an egg laid in that. So they look quite different. So if you see, you'll know the difference, obviously, when you see them.
So just to summarize, if you see a queen cup, should you panic?
No, not panic. However, have a look in it. If there's an egg or a larvae, yeah, not panic. Just have a look in your hive and see, the health of your hive, what's going on in your hive, whether you have a queen, whether your hive is overpopulated. And then if all that checks the boxes, well, I would definitely either you could split the hive or you could actually take that egg and make another nuke. There's a lot of different things you can do when you find a cup with an egg in it.
All right. I gave you a little bit of warning earlier. I want to hear a wild and crazy beekeeping story from up there in Newfoundland or Labrador or somewhere around you. Something that happened to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell the story. I wasn't going to, but it's my first swarm. As a brand spanking new beekeeper, brand new suit, I was good to go. I got the call, buddy, and I was like, obviously I should have had my things packed away and organized as I do now in my truck. I didn't. So at first I got the call and then I started thinking I had to get wire. Anyway, so I went through the garage, got stuff I did not need, packed it in, off I went. So it was at the university. The swarm was there probably about 2 to 3 days. There was a lot of calls on it and I eventually got to me. So I booted and the adrenaline rush, I just have to say, and you probably know as well, when you get that call, there's a swarm, is like unexplainable. It's just an awesome feeling. So I booted it out to a road.
And why is that? It just shouldn't be that big a deal.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone gets it. I hope they do. Normalize it for me.
Well, especially when you're new. It's like freebies plus a whole new experience plus.
So this was at the university. So I went in. It was like 10 o'clock in the night. There wasn't a person to be in sight. It was a pretty scary place in the dark, but I went and they had all this, the police tape, don't cross. They had all that around the swarm. So I went in, of course, swarms aren't aggressive, right?
What I was told.
That's what I learned. But anyway, so I go in.
Somebody lied to me.
Oh, yeah. I go in. I didn't have my veil on. I'm like, how you doing, ladies? What are you doing here tonight, ladies? So I started to talk to them, and I went over to touch them. Well, holy cow. They were like Africanized bees. They were like, boom. So I booted it over to the Jeep, and I got my veil on, and I tell you, they weren't friendly at all. And anyway, the tree, it was just a different tree. It wasn't a tree I could shake. It was this big old tree, and they were like stuck in the middle of it. How in the heck do I get them out of there? So you know what? I got the hands going, and I just scooped them, scoop by scoop, put them in the box. Eventually, obviously, the queen was in there, and all of them walked in. But afterwards, I was told, I wish I had known this information before I went, that the bees were there probably 3 days. And it was drizzly. So obviously they were super cranky, they were cold, and they were hungry. So all that's a recipe for mean bees. I just wish I had known that before. However, lesson learned, I will never approach a swarm without my veil on ever again. And I often say to people, you really need to wear your bee suit going after a swarm. Now, not everybody feels that way, but I guess I learned the hard way. I'll always wear my bee suit.
Okay, now we've all seen people on YouTube that are all done up, have perfect makeup and everything, and no bee suit whatsoever, no protective gear, and they go in there for those swarms. Would you please explain how they can do that? And is it a good idea for beginners, by the way?
So I'm not going to get in trouble, am I? So, out of a lot of those things that you see on Facebook with the perfect hair and the makeup and the tight jeans and whatever, I think, it's staged. And that's just my opinion. I'm not saying that that's exactly what happens. That's just my opinion. When they can go in and this board comes really easy off the floor to expose this, 5 frame or 5 thing of wax of hive, like it doesn't happen that easy. I just think of some of the states that I get in when I'm beekeeping, like, holy cow, like it's not fit. So when you go in perfect and their nails done, these people have their nails done. I had no idea. I think it's very staged. That's just my opinion.
My opinion is they've checked out that swarm first.
Yeah.
If they were smart, they checked it out first. If they were doing a cutout, they did the cutting the day before, so the bees have calmed back down.
Yeah.
And yes, I was also taught that swarms are so nice.
Yeah.
You don't even need your bee suit or anything. The first one that I did was huge, and it was not nice. But I captured a relatively small one last week that was actually on my property, and they were the sweetest things ever. I could have had makeup and nails and everything on and gone out and scooped them up. They just, for some reason, looked like they were going to be sweet, and I had a veil on. I didn't have gloves or anything, and they were just happy to be there and happy to go where I wanted them to go. But it's not always that way, folks.
No. When you get into beekeeping and, you don't, and this is just my opinion, right? I mean, obviously, I work, I'm a social worker, I work within the system, and, obviously I wear dresses and all that kind of stuff, but I'm beekeeping. No, that's not the way that I present myself, because it's just not easy to do when you're in like 19 degree or Fahrenheit. What's that in Fahrenheit with you guys? 19 degrees.
Having done the math in my head, that is 66.2 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's a little low, actually, for some of the places up, in the United States. So let's say it's about 100 degrees here in Newfoundland, and you're in a bee suit. You're warm. You're sweaty. You're sweating. You got honey all over you. You're not the best sight. I'm just saying. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think bees react to the sweat? Do you think they like it or hate it?
Absolutely. I think they don't like it, actually. And the same thing with your breath. I mean, bees are really about smell. Yes, the sight, but like pheromones are so important for honeybees. And I think absolutely they react to that stuff.
Well, here's your trivia for the day. Their sense of smell is 50 times stronger than that of a dog.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Things that we can't smell, they often can.
And when you think about it, they don't have noses. So that's even cooler because it's their antenna that picks up that.
Well, I thought they smelled through their ears.
Funny man.
Which they don't have either. Come on, Rae Lynn.
Funny man.
All right, leave us with one bit of advice And then I've got one last question for you after that.
Bit of advice. You know what? And again, I'm going to go on the rant of, personal equipment and protective. And I just tell a story. And this is a wonderful man out in the west coast of Newfoundland. He was a new beekeeper. So he was actually going to do some nukes, like create some nukes with his other beekeeper. I'm going to call him beekeeper. So anyway, he went out and he did nukes. He didn't wear a suit. This beekeeper is supposed to be experienced, is supposed to be teaching other people how to beekeep. Told him not to wear a suit, told him not to wear, any equipment whatsoever. Just come on, we'll do it. He got stung over 160 times and he was emerged.
In one day?
In one day.
Oh, man.
So he was in emerge. They had to give him adrenaline. He was really sick, like really sick. So my piece of advice, wear your equipment. Absolutely. And another piece of advice, can I say two?
You can do 3 if you want.
Ooh. So another piece of advice I have is that, you know what? I don't know if this everywhere, but there's some beekeepers in Newfoundland that are a little bit shady. And that's sad to say. However, when you go pick up your nuke, make sure you're getting it from a reputable, beekeeper, and that you have a queen, and that you have what's supposed to be in a nuke, which should be, your resource frames, your brood, and most importantly, like I said, your queen. Because there's some beekeepers that sell nukes that don't have a queen, and that's not a good start for a new beekeeper, absolutely.
How do people know a reputable one? How do they tell?
Yeah, so word of mouth is a big thing, especially here in Newfoundland. I mean, we're a very small province. I have many beekeepers that I know of that I pass on their names because I know that I trust them and they love bees just as much as I do and know what should be in a nuke. So ask around, make sure you ask your questions. And you know what? I'm also a fan that a couple of days before you go pick up your nuke, it's okay to say, can I come over and have a look, and have that beekeeper go through the nuke with you and look at your queen and look at the resources in your frames to make sure you're getting what you're paying for. In Newfoundland, nukes are probably going at about $350 here in the province. I'm not sure. And that's Canadian.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So it is.
Well, that's Canadian. So that's like $100 US, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm exaggerating there. It's not that bad of an exchange rate.
It is. Oh, it's pretty bad.
Let me do some math, Raylynn. It's 0.73. So now that I've done my math via Google, about $255. And I see them anywhere from 150 to 200 plus here. So
okay. Yeah.
So that's a little on the high side for what we see, but they're different everywhere.
Okay. And I think, with Newfoundland, you're not allowed to import honeybees. So when you are starting off, you have to try to find a beekeeper within the province that are willing to sell you bees. I remember when I started, I had this wonderful, and I really look up to him, Peter Armitage here in the city. And he sold me my bees. And he had an interview with me actually before he let me take the bees. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's a wonderful beekeeper. I look up to him. He's a mentor for sure. And I remember that. And he had to, there was requirements. You had to have a course. And it was great.
Good.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, advice number 3.
Get a mentor.
Perfect.
Yep, big time. Yeah. A lot of people, and you know what? On the site, I get a lot of questions around the day, and I absolutely love it. And I try to get to every single one of them. I've actually done first hive inspections with people over FaceTime. I mean, it's just, unfortunately, that's the way it is sometimes. And if there's nobody around, you know what? I'm always up for help. But yeah, so make sure try to find yourself a reputable beekeeper as a mentor that is going to nurture you, respect you, encourage you, not kind of talk down to you or tell you how to do it. Because everyone beekeeps differently.
Rae Lynn can be found at Bee Haven all over the place online. And hey, we just might put a link in the show notes too.
Thank you for having me. It was great to have a conversation.
Hey, I still have one last question for you. You cannot get away this easy.
Sure.
But I can tell from our previous conversation also that you really love bees.
Absolutely.
Tell us why. What is it about them?
Oh, I absolutely love bees. So I saw a thing, I put it on my Facebook site actually, and it was like, I'm in a relationship with honeybees. And that explains it for me perfectly. I love building bees. I love making healthy bees. There's nothing like going up in the morning in my apiary and just hearing them buzz and watching them going in and out of the hive. I don't know. It's just something about bees that's so relaxing and it's therapeutic. It's really good for your mental health. And I also love how it brings people together. So you have a bunch of people in a room, you don't know anything about them. As soon as a bee comes up, if they're beekeepers, obviously, the conversations start. And it's the best conversations you'll ever have. Like when you go into, like I said, the bee expo, these people, everyone was strangers when you first walk in. But I'll tell you, by the end of the bee expo, everyone's like your friend. It's wonderful how it brings people together.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot, Rae Lynn.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us here on Bee Love Beekeeping, presented by Mann Lake. Remember right now to follow or subscribe and share this podcast. Also, a quick shout out to Vita Bee Health for their support. Vita's Varroa control range of products includes Apistan, Apigard, and now Viroxan, extended release oxalic acid strips. Thanks, guys. And remember, if you're not just in it for the honey or the money, you're in it for the love. See you next week.